Have you heard the comments the last couple of days that President Obama has been making about our Constitution and the Supreme Court? Here's a man who actually believes that the Supreme Court of the United States shouldn't have the power to determine what is constitutional and what isn't. This is a guy who thinks this unelected body shouldn't have the power to do this. It's very interesting that a man who taught constitutional law in universities, that this guy has this point of view. And I think the most dangerous part of this whole conversation is the fact that he has taught our sons and daughters this type of stuff. This is the kind of stuff that's happening in universities across this country, unfortunately. This type of talk about judicial activism, this is taking the Constitution and turning it upside down. The federal government does not have the right to force me, a taxpayer, an average working stiff, to hand over my money to a private company that's in the business of profit. A private company which is listed on the New York Stock Exchange, for instance. A private company that is beholden to its stockholders. And actually a private company that could be a global healthcare company. The federal government doesn't have that right. But let me tell you what the federal government could do. They could have set up free clinics in every part of this country, in every neighborhood. They could have jacked up my taxes and your taxes. They could have done that. They could take and pay the doctors and the nurses and all the healthcare providers in those federal free clinics as much money as they want. In fact, they could pay them more than what the private sector compensates their doctors, which is usually what happens in these types of bureaucratic institutions. But they do not have the right to force me to hand over my money to a private company. And I don't care if it's health care, I don't care if it's auto repair. This is not a right the federal government has, and it will probably be struck down by the Supreme Court. And Obama's going to have a problem with that. Now, what's his next move? Is he going to all of a sudden say the judicial branch is no longer in effect? Is he going to sign an executive order that says we're not going to be listening to the Supreme Court anymore? We don't need the judicial branch to be passing a judgment on a constitutional law? Is this his next executive order once he's reelected? I mean, this is the craziness that exists in Washington today. And it's not just President Obama. It's a whole host of people. Keep in mind that every single congressman and congresswoman who voted for that plan supposedly is supposed to know what's in the Constitution. I don't even have a college education, and I know that is not in the Constitution. So, President Obama, you have a big problem on your hands. You got a problem with me and every other citizen in this country who actually knows what's in the Constitution, and who believes in the Constitution, and who doesn't believe in judicial activism like you do to change the rules of the game once you become president. Sorry, man. This is not constitutional. You're not going to get your way on this one, and no executive order is going to change this situation. Okay, so it's been a few days since President Obama made his outrageous comments in the Rose Garden about the Constitution of the United States and how this unelected body of individuals, the Supreme Court, didn't have the right to rule on the constitutionality of laws. And I just want to, and I've heard several places in the news media. In fact, the next day, the president came out and said, "Oh no, he had to he wanted to adjust, put a spin on what he said." The news media, a lot of people in the news media are defending him, which is fine. They have the right to defend him. I want to explain to you why I know, why we can assume that everything he said in the Rose Garden he believes in. It's in his head and it's in his heart. The Rose Garden is not a place where you just come out and you sort of wing it. You sort of off the top of your head, you sort of come up with ideas and sort of banter them about. He had several days to think about what was happening in the Supreme Court, and he had time to really think about what he was going to say. And he said it. He came to the Rose Garden. He had a point of view, and he made the statements that he wanted to make. It wasn't like he sort of collected them on. It wasn't like on the spur of the moment. He knew exactly what he was going to say, and he said it. And you know something? That's what's great about this country. You can say whatever you want. We have the freedom to do that. In fact, it's written in the Constitution. But the reality is he can't take it back. He has a different point of view about the Constitution. I'm sad for that, because when he swears an oath to the office of the presidency, and he raises his right hand and he says, "I'll defend and defend the Constitution of the United States from foreign domestic forces." I mean, that's important to me. But unfortunately, he doesn't believe in the same Constitution I believe in. His point of view about the Constitution isn't what I believe in, and a lot of people in America. He's not on board with three branches of government, apparently, and one of those branches being, in fact, responsible for determining whether or not laws in this country are constitutional or not. So I'm sorry for that, but he can't take it back. It's on his head. He said it in the Rose Garden. He knew what he was going to say walking in there, and he said it. And so he's going to have to live with it, just like we have to live with his point of view.